Okay, we want to welcome all and on this great day and call to order this meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee meeting on Monday, January 25th. And Mr. George Valentine will lead us in the invocation.
Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for our health, Lord, and our family, Father. Father, as we pause on this day, even with the excitement of sports, Father, we pause to remember those who are in need. Father, we ask for the relief to Haiti to continue, Lord, that people's hearts will be opened and broken to this situation, Father. Father, and also to the need of our people here in the parish, Lord. Father, we ask blessings on our workers and employees of the parish, our administration and our council members. We ask that you give us wisdom to do thy work. In your Son's holy name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A roll call, Ms. Luzon, Councilman Johnson and Councilman Thompson are not here tonight. Number 3, public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item will sign a card and be given a 3-minute period on that agenda item. And number 4, litter control in Ascension Parish. We have been approached by a citizen, Councilman Chairman Bell has, and he wanted to give kind of a heads up on the litter in Ascension Parish, and I think it's going to be an eye-opener. We just want to bring some of this information to you as parish residents as we try to tackle these problems. And Mr. Mark Beecher.
Good evening. Is this on? Good evening. My name is Mark Breacher. I'm a resident of Prairieville since 1999. I came today to show you all a little issue that everybody's pretty much aware of with the litter in and around Ascension Parish. I'm an avid cyclist. I've covered about 700 miles of Ascension Parish roads last year, and you really notice a lot of the stuff when you're doing 20 miles an hour instead of 50, 60. So have a little slideshow set up for y'all, PowerPoint presentation. I also have some handouts for y'all to follow along with. If there's any issues, you can go back on and look at them later. Addressing litter issues in Ascension, making the public aware of the impact of litters both visually and financially to our parish. Education, where does it start, who's responsible for it, where does it end, how to control litter, public and governmental duties. Litter is a major issue in Ascension Parish. We're all pretty much aware of that when we drive in and out, to go to the store, going back and forth to work, and pretty much anything that flies out of trucks, trailers, people that purposely throw it out. And although not technically litter, we also look at junk vehicles that are sitting on property, visible from the public streets, damaged buildings, and overgrown property. Here's a snippet of the current litter ordinance in Ascension Parish, and one of my biggest ones, because it really happens a lot at the corner of my street off of 73, is a lot of your little signs, the plastic signs that are nailed on every telephone pole, stuck in every median and all that stuff. And it says that, all these signs are not allowed within public right-of-ways. Now this is actually taken from another city's ordinance plan, but I'm sure ours is fairly close to it because I wasn't fully aware of what public right-of-way was. And it kind of goes by the first, in like neighborhoods and that, the first expansion joint on driveways, or if there's a sidewalk present, the area closest to the house, that edge, is considered public right-of-ways. And also utility poles, according to energy, nothing is supposed to be attached to a utility pole. It's against the law, but everybody, these people that advertise in their businesses and services do it. This is the kind of area that I live in, and also Councilman Pat Bell is in this area that where we reside, and it's kind of about a 7-mile trek that I targeted, coming off of the interstate, coming down 73 to Airline Highway, back up 61 to 621, and a couple of the little streets in between, taking Duplessis Road, Post Office Road. This section here is dealing with the signs. This is across from St. John's Church. Now, according to the Ascension Parish ordinance, basically there are 6 violations there with the 6 different signs. Moving along here, there's another one. This is actually over there at 61 and Babin Road, St. Jude Dream Home. Number 1, it's in violation because it is placed in the public right of way. Number 2, my thing is the giveaway date was November 1st of 2009, so it's almost been 90 days. How come it hasn't been removed? Whoever, put the sign there needs to be responsible for removing it. Sorry, Ricky, we're not out posting you out here, man, but just one of the ones I found. There's actually 2 of these on Airline Highway, and I'm not sure, I could not find anything pertaining to actual campaign signs, but a lot of other cities that I researched, most of them require you within three days after an election, they have to be removed. This is an apartment complex on Highway 61 near 621 who has about 10 or 12 signs out advertising their different services. Once again, they're in violation, they're in the public right of way. And we all know winds come along, heavy rains and stuff, they get blown down and they end up in the ditches down the street, and of course nobody goes and picks them up. That mapped area that I showed you, this is the best of my knowledge as I counted as I was driving around taking pictures. There's 146 signs posted on corners and down the roadway. So technically, under the Ascension Parish ordinance, that's 146 violations in just that one small area of the parish. Next off is the buildings, property, and vehicles. Abandoned, damaged, and unusable buildings pose a danger to the parish and residents. Children can go and play in abandoned buildings. They become breeding grounds for crime and animal infestations. Neglected property is unsightly and affects property values. People don't adhere to the 24-inch grass mowing. Fence lines aren't clean like they should be. And just, it makes the appearance of our parish and the reputation of Ascension Parish, look not so good. Junked and non-operational vehicles, that's another big problem in this area. You get that in a lot of, more rural style areas. This is on Highway 61 near Duplessis Road. You can see the 2 18-wheeler trucks there. I know pretty much from riding those areas and driving to the store and that, those have been there well over a year. They haven't been moved since, and I'm just going to go to the assumption they don't work, but junk vehicles is pretty much what they follow under. That home has been there for about a year for sale on that trail, and that's really, you can see the closeness to the highway of how close it's there, and it's just been sitting there. I consider that an eyesore to the parish. This is actually adjacent to that, a little 1-car garage, an 18-wheeler with a hole cut in the front, and that has been sitting there for well over a year. I mean, who's going to buy it? Property owner's not using it. I mean, what is it there for? This is near my area, the corner of Bishop Woods and Duplessis Road. And that building, since I have moved here in 1999, that building has never had anything in it. And of course now you can see something went through it in the last hurricane and has destroyed most of the building. This is actually a little building on Bishop Woods right behind it. This falls under the junk vehicles also. I'm assuming this resident here does some type of work and all that stuff, and not to pick on anybody what they do for a living. I don't care, everybody's got to make a living and all that stuff, but most municipalities that I've researched, require them, if you're going to have vehicles like this, any type of business, it needs to be behind a screened fence to where it's not visible to the public. Where does it start? Who's responsible? It just starts with a simple toss of a can, bottle, bag, anything out of a truck, things that fly out of vehicles, and I hold everybody responsible. We're all responsible. And, it starts with, teaching our children, the residents, the parish government needs to step up and really take a good, stand on the litter. Actually, you got laws on the books, you got fines attached to them, go after the offenders. And especially the ones that you can really see are repeats, or it's been there for a year, 2 years, 3 years. It kind of gets to the point where, it's getting old. This is on Highway 61 near the Duplessis Road area. My objective here behind the tent is that pile of trash and garbage there. It's various toys and everything. That pile is large enough that you could park a Suburban behind it and not even see it. I'm sure this resident does not have a permit for a dumping ground. This is on Bishop Woods. This was actually taken yesterday when I was on a bike ride. And this is actually a corner near my residence where the ditch flows and trash is carried on, and it's just, from other areas, plus people throw it out. Awareness of litter, promote a cleaner and better Ascension Parish through education starting in the schools. I have family that live in Austin, Texas, and my nephews attend school there, and they're taught in the 3rd grade and in the 6th grade and in high school, about litter. And my 8-year-old nephew has actually gone out with his class on a class field trip to a park where they actually do litter control, pick it up physically, and they learn. And a short little story here that really got me, my 12-year-old nephew is in the Cub Scouts and is working the UT games in the concession stand. He called me up one day after the game, says, "Uncle Mark, they don't know how to tailgate here." I said, "What do you mean?" "They don't litter." I said, "What do you mean you don't litter?" And then my sister-in-law got on the phone 45 minutes after the game when they left. She said they walked across an area about the distance from the LSU stadium to the back of the Alex Box Stadium, the old stadium. There was not one piece of trash because they instill in the people, it's the mindset of the people, you don't litter, and they'll kick you off the grounds if you don't clean up your tailgating area. And if any of y'all have ever been out to LSU, like on a Sunday morning, right after, that's an eye-opener. Go out right after a game. It's amazing, the amount of trash. I figure, I know money is a major issue, but I figure you can educate the public with PSAs via the newspapers. We got that new Prairieville paper, internet, and television ads. Where does it stop? How do we control it? It stops with you. It stops with me. It stops with all of us. Control the litter with the public awareness. Teach the students with the programs that are available out there. Hold offenders responsible by enforcing the current litter laws. And if it, of course, is always an issue with money trying to do anything publicly, but with these repeat offenders and that, apply the fines that are in the law books. Go after these people and tell them, here's your letter, your 2 weeks. Get it cleaned up. If not, we're going to come in, you're going to get fined, you got to pay the fine, whatever, that part of the law takes effect. Public and government duties. It's the duty of all citizens in Ascension Parish to control the litter issues. As a parent, you can teach your children, about litter. You're responsible for setting an example for your children. Schools can implement the anti-litter programs and get the students involved in the cleanup process. As I mentioned about my nephew's school, where you actually physically get them involved to where they can actually see, hey, this isn't fun picking up litter. I'll think twice about throwing it on the ground again. Parish and city employees are responsible for reporting any litter, property, or potential dangerous issues pertaining to the environment. I don't know how this will strike most of them, but if I was a parish employee driving around in a parish provided vehicle and you're doing your regular job, if you see something that possibly goes against the ordinance, jot it down, pick up your cell phone, call the office and say, hey, look, I think I got a violation here. Y'all need to go ahead and check it out. It doesn't take but a few seconds to do that. And if we start tackling these issues, then maybe we can clean up our parish and get rid of a lot of these issues. In your packet that I gave you, I also have the City of Austin, Texas, their litter ordinances. And maybe, this can give you a little more insight of things that y'all can maybe add to ours if we aren't already, have them enforced into our laws. Different illegal dumpings, and also included in your packet, litter prevention and teaching information. There's a world of knowledge out there on the internet, different programs. Touch real quickly on the Solid Waste Services of Austin, Texas. I'm assuming it's just like Acadian Waste or something like that. They actually provide a school-taught curriculum. They go into the school systems and actually their employees go there and teach them about litter, and they actually have tours of the facility to show them how trash is taken care of, how long that plastic bottle is going to lay on the side of the road until you're dead and gone, it's still going to be there. They just inform the children from an early age when they're impressionable and let them know. And I've seen it myself with my nephew and some of his friends that I don't know, and they came to visit me here, and they're walking around, and they were in Walmart, and they say, "Oh my God, look at all the litter." And this is coming from 8-year-old kids. You know, 8-year-old kids don't care about litter, but these do, because they're being taught, you know, it's bad for the environment, it looks bad, and it, you know, it needs to be addressed. Pretty much, that's my thing on there, on the litter deal, and I hope that Ascension can buckle down and start, you know, going after these offenders. The signs are clearly in violation of the ordinance, and the trash piles and the junk vehicles, junk buildings. Coming in here, I saw the old Enterprise Rent-A-Car building that's on Airline at Highway 44. That's been vacant for probably over a year since they moved, and that's where the parish maybe needs to step up and send a letter to the owner and say, hey, look, what are you going to do with it? If it's saleable, you need to make it presentable, make it saleable. If you can't, knock it down, make an empty lot, sell it. Do what you can, but I mean, as a parish and residents, we all need to come together and really work hard on this. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Let me come for you and express my concerns, and hopefully we can get something done here. If y'all have any questions, I'll try to answer them the best I can.
Thank you very much, Mark. And this is one of the things that really is a big concern of myself, and it's really aggravating to, if you travel at all, to see how it can be, and to know good people of Ascension Parish. And, you know, I think we've got the greatest people in the world over here, but one of the problems we do have, pretty obviously, if you go and notice, is the litter problem. And, you know, a couple of things as we were looking into it, it gets pretty frustrating. One of the things is that as a rural government, we cannot implement some of the laws that can be done easily in a municipality. However, we can do many of the things that you talked about, and so there is actions that can be taken. And one of them, you know, we're going to be talking about it next, is implementing a parish court so we can have a process to bring violators to an actual consequence.
Yes.
Which, you know, right now it's very, very hard to do any type of civil consequences to anyone. And so litter is one of them, as well as junk cars and all the other things. So we're in the process of doing it, and hopefully we can get that going through a little faster. But
one other suggestion I'd like to see is, I noticed this on the Austin's website, is they actually have a under each ordinance, like litter or, you know, fire damage, anything, they have a link that you can click on for complaints, to where if a resident in the parish knows of something, they can actually go in there and hit the link, and then, hey, look, there's a problem at blah, 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 you know, address on this road, you know, please check it out. And I don't know if that's available on our website or not, but, you know, that might be something they can look into, simple, you know, way to actually report it. This way, they're actually made aware of it.
yeah, thank you. Ricky, what's the process for reporting if people believe there's violations? Because you know, we do have an ordinance on right-of-ways of litter signs and things like that. We can clean up a lot of things.
We have a link currently on the website for people to go and click on, and when they click on it, it uploads a digital form, and they can fill it out digitally, or they can print it out and either fax it or mail it or bring it into our office, and it becomes part of our file, and that's how we're documenting them right now.
Okay, and the follow-up to picking up, I know we have a sign crew that goes around the parish, and it's based on call-ins to pick up signs that are in the right-of-way. But basically, that's about it for the parish.
Is there any issue with a resident removing those signs? I mean, can you be held liable in any way if, you know, like they're at the corner of my street and I know they're in the right of way? Is there any issue if I walk down there and pick them up and throw them in the garbage can?
No, you have to take the responsibility about whether it's on the right of way or it's not on the right of way.
Yeah.
You know, you would run into problems if it's not on the right of way. If it's on private property, then they have every right to do that. We also have sign ordinances, and we have issues, things about, you know, you have to make certain types of signs and everything. So, you know, we do have things, our big problem right now in the parish is enforcement. And we do realize that. We are trying to implement some new things. It's, we were making progress last year, and I guess, like everything else, the storms put everything about a year behind. And so we're just recovering from that where we can operate government again and start moving forward. So that's not an excuse, it's just something that we want to move forward and we want to establish some things. And we do have some things trying to move forward. And I want to urge everyone to stop this. It's going to take everyone as a team in Ascension Parish to just say, you know, we've got enough. And I know I pick up litter down my street, and I've chased people that I've seen throw things and reported them. So I have no qualms about that. There's no excuse to put litter down. So, Mr. Grant, can as administration, can we look into some more things that we can do?
Well, certainly, and a number of that were addressed in the presentation are being done at some level. I can tell you, I personally get copies now of every letter that goes out to someone with some kind of proper, you know, either junk cars or whatever, or mostly the code enforcement notices that we send are those for litter on property. I get those as a matter of record. At this point, as we begin to talk about this next item, from this point forward, I would tell you that there's always more that we can do with the resources we have, and we'll do that. But at some point, we have to decide that we are going to invest in doing more. I'll give you an example. I found the gentleman's presentation very interesting today. I just happened today to be sent a survey, a national survey on contracted services that governments do. It was a 31-question survey. Ascension Parish could only answer 4. We don't do any of that. We don't do solid waste. We don't do, we're not in that business yet. And we're still in a major debate among ourselves as to what level of service we can provide and will do. So until we make that leap of more of a provision directly of those services, we always are going to have the constraint of what it is we're doing the best we can with what we have. So yes, there's no question. I'll look very carefully in the presentation and any and everything we can do with the sign crews to get more of the signs off the right of way, to get more notices out about people having derelict stuff on their property. We'll continue to do. We've now got the mechanism in place for our parish court. We'll get to do that. But I think we're at the point now where we still are limited government. We still are limited by what it is that we are actually have the capacity to do.
Yeah, and people need to understand we are transferring from a very, very rural government
Yes,
to you know, more of a suburban government now, where services are expected by people. In the past, people fought for, you know, that against these services. You know, obviously had a, you know, people that don't know that moved in. We had an opportunity in the early 70s to get parish-wide sewer, and 95% by federal and state government. And the people that suggested that, they wanted to run them out of town. And we had opportunity a number, you know, not too long ago, to buy the water system in Ascension Parish for $5.5 million, and they didn't take that opportunity. And so those services that as they come up, you know, and we're getting resistance all the time as we try to implement a sewer system because somebody has their own septic tank and bodad. But as you build on top of each other, you find out that that's not, you know, the more residences we get, we have to move in a certain direction. So that transition is sometimes a lot harder to do. But again, talk to your neighbor, talk to people around, and let everybody know your feelings about litter. We will urge administration to continue and give us some options to what we can do to help cut down on the litter and help pick up things for the parish, and see what we can do to budget that in some way, shape, or form. But we do not have anything right now any trucks, anything to pick up any litter. I do want people to know that as a rural parish, out of the municipalities, it takes between a year to 2 years to tear down an abandoned building that's that's really should be torn down immediately, because you have to, legally you have to go through a certain procedure, and getting property owners to sign off on, and a lot of these are in large families, and so we're actively doing that, but you're finding out that each one of them takes years to do, not just a month, and so that's another point of emphasis, and you know, I don't know how much we can expand in that area, because we do have a code enforcement officer that's working very hard on that right now. But it's painfully slow. And so, any questions or comments? That was it. We just wanted to bring people the awareness of the problem in case you wasn't aware of it. And hopefully we can all get together in the parish and try to make things better for our people. Okay, number 5, update on Parish Court. Mr. Grant.
Yes, sir.
Kind of related.
We have, as you're well aware, we passed the ordinances in 2009 allowing for parish court. We have now aligned the ordinance with our administrative processes. Legal and planning have worked very closely together on giving us the administrative processes on how we will manage what was passed in the ordinance. We've done training on our staff of code enforcement officers in their particular areas of blighted properties and junk cars, white goods, grass cutting, those things that were covered in the ordinance. We are now ready. We're now ready to do the next step, which is basically hire the hearing officer and clerical support. So I would ask for your consideration of a resolution authorizing an ordinance for about $20,000 that I'd like to appropriate for that purpose, to hire the hearing officer and the clerical support for that.
Okay. That's what it would take to get this started.
Yes, it's about $15,000 for the hearing officer, and about, you know, we're going to do a half-time person for the clerical support.
Okay. And some of these, some of the extra expenses should be paid for.
We would hope
fees and
eventually
things, yes.
that they're going to be covered by the cost, but just as we've been talking about here, I don't think anything that we're doing so far is covering our costs. I mean, right now, we put grass liens on people that don't cut their grass, and we don't ever get that money back. We put liens on people with the blighted properties, and because of the multiple users, don't recover very much of that money. So for a while, it's going to be the cost of, the administrative cost of doing it will come out of our budget. But we believe that we can and will find those offenders.
And
recover some
make
costs.
sure everyone knows that nothing comes without a cost.
That's correct.
And so lack of litter in the parish is going to cost, just like everything else. And so, but I think the big point is, once we get the parish adjudicated court, we have a means to effectively give people consequences that is quite simple, quite fair, and it takes the parish workers out of the loop and of punishment. And so
Right now, I've got three officers that will be doing, 3 code enforcement folks that will be doing this parish-wide, so, and they will be responding to complaints.
Okay. Procedurally,
That-
can we,
We should
Just for a resolution,
We should authorize a resolution to the Finance Committee
yes, sir,
and have
to introduce a
administration
budget ordinance.
put in, chronology exactly what they want.
yeah, and that's
Not to
what I'm
exceed
looking for
20,000.
right now, that we could.
Okay,
we could
I'll
do.
make that motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to offer a resolution to send to finance for a budgetary amount made up by the administration right now at $20,000 to discuss to try to get running our litter court so that we can have some way to process this. Any other questions? Any objections? So moved. Ms. Suzanne, please send that to finance. Update on riverfront development. Ms. Danielle Dahl. Danielle is the Downtown Development Director, current Director, and she has, this was supposed to happen in December, and we had our meeting because of the holidays canceled, so she's making an update as we were supposed to do by all different groups that we support. So we appreciate you coming in, Danielle.
Good evening. I'm just here to, like he said, to update on the Riverfront project. It has moved along. We were stopped for a while because of the rain, and the river level had come up, and it was over 12 feet. It has recently just gone back under 11 feet, and they have begun work again. And Eric Poche is with me to give you more details on the technical end.
Eric, can you, introduce yourself and what your capacity
Yes.
and give us a little background?
All right. My name's Eric Poche. I'm a landscape architect with SJB Group, and we were contracted with the City of Donaldsonville to provide construction documents and administration for the Levee Top Trail. That's approximately 1,130 linear feet. It runs from right behind People's Water Company almost to the Bayou de Fouche pump station. And this trail consists of approximately 15 to 20 sections, 60-foot length, and each one of those sections has what I call a jut out. It's about 5 or 6 foot. The trail itself is 12 feet wide, and every 60 feet there is one area that juts out about 5 to 6 feet. It's about 25 or 30 feet. That it consists of 2 benches, trash receptacle, and every other one of these has a light standard on it. So it's going to be a paved surface. It's going to be textured colored concrete in a brick pattern. And we are also going to resurface the access road right off of Crescent Park between People's Water Company and a little playground area right there. And we're going to resurface the area, the parking area right by the playground. As Danielle said, we got this project started. The notice to proceed was issued in the middle of October. They got most of the clearing and grubbing and earthwork, rough grading, earthwork done before probably the middle of November when the river rose above 11 at the Carrollton Gauge in New Orleans. It stayed there for about 2 to 3 weeks until the first week of December, at which time, after it went below 11, we got about 23 inches of rain over the next 2 to 3 weeks, so they weren't able to do anything then. And then toward the end of December, it went back above 11, so we couldn't do any work. And just this past week, they have started back out again. They've gotten their alignment stakes set, and they're hoping to get the earthwork finished up, as well as put the gravel and get the bed ready to go ahead and form and start pouring the concrete. And basically what we're trying to do is get everything done that involves heavy equipment, so that if the river does come above 11 again, which it's anticipated to do that in the next few weeks, that they won't have to worry about any heavy equipment or anything. All that'll be done, and they can continue to move forward with it. The scheduled completion date originally was February the 6th, but it's toward the middle or end of April right now to have it done. And this is phase 1 of an overall riverfront development plan. It includes developing area in the Batcher on the riverside of the levee. Hopefully one day it's to include a riverboat dock and festival venue and areas for picnicking, gathering, amphitheaters, and so on and so forth. And, when this thing started originally, we want to get something going there so that hopefully it'll spur interest and kind of get people behind it so that we can see what'll come next and move things along a little bit at a time. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, what's the total budget for your this phase?
The total budget, we got capital outlay funds totaling $500,000 to do this first phase, which is the
For this
Levee
phase
Top
only?
Trail.
What is phase? The other phase? Do you have you even got into budget on those?
We've got numbers that are probably 2 to 3 years old, and it's been a good while since I can certainly get those to you. I would have to look back through my notes and get them. But I mean, it was a substantial amount of money. I mean, I'm sure just guessing and trying to remember what I've seen. I mean, 25, 30, 40 million dollars. I mean, it's a pretty good size endeavor that will have to be spanned over a fair number of years.
Thank you, man.
Any other thing? And that study was done about 4 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, it was completed in 2007,
Yeah.
actually. I think we started it in 2005, first part of 2006, and it was completed towards the middle end of 2007.
Yeah, as designed for that.
Right.
Yeah. And because the plan was submitted, I think, in 2005, 2006. And, you know, one of the things is try to connect both sides of the river.
Right.
Within the dock, they're talking about little ferries to go to, like Homer's House in Darrow, and,
Yes.
and hopefully we can get, they're talking with the Pontchartrain Levee District, of which this council has supported a couple years ago, to have a biking trail, concreted biking trail on top of the levee on the east bank. So
Yes.
hopefully those things can be connected, and we can promote that type of activity and connect both sides of the river in a very positive manner. So what Danielle and Downtown Development is trying to do is try to keep this alive and can keep moving forward to the next phase, trying to get monies for this. That's their job, and as well as doing some things on Main Street and everything within Donaldsonville. So it's kind of a commingling of monies to get things moving forward for the parish and the city.
Right, and I mean, we're hoping that you tie both sides of the river together. I mean, we're hoping to spur economic development right on the land side of the river, you know, to kind of keep things moving and have it be beneficial to both sides of the river.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 7, Spud PUD TND Overlay Zone Ordinance, number DC 10-01. Mr. Ricky Compton, our planning director.
What we've got in front of you is a result of when we did our zoning map provision last year. We added 3 areas to the map via a bold purple line that defines a PUD, SPUD, T&D overlay. And until this ordinance is enacted, that line is really just a line on the map that calls out the area that, you know, in the meetings with the council that we had, there was a discussion over what sort of development would we allow in these areas. And the intent was that if we required those developments to be PUD, SPUDs, or T&D, we would get a higher quality development in those particular areas. And so the ordinance that we've drafted specifically defines what the PUD, SPUD, T&D overlay zone is. And we've created the language to be consistent with the other overlay zones that we have in our code today. And I can read it if you like, but it's long. But it basically talks about the purpose is to anticipate high areas of growth and encourage smart growth standards within these areas, and how to apply the PUD, SPUD, T&D overlay in the areas that we've defined on the map.
Okay, thank you very much. And what problem were we solving by doing this? I know you had talked about
I wouldn't say we're solving a problem per se, but what I would say is right now what we've got is a zoning map with a line without a definition.
Okay.
And so this gives our zoning map clarity when somebody looks at it, you know, somebody, let's just say from out of state or out of town that wants to come to Ascension Parish and develop, and they see a PUD, SPUD, T&D overlay, and they flip to our code, and that section is reserved today. The language is basically going to define to somebody that wants to develop in these specific areas what standards they're going to be held to.
Okay. All right, and you need a recommendation.
Recommendation for the council, correct.
I'll make that motion to the council.
Motion by Councilman Kluwat,
Second.
second by Councilman Valentine, to send forward to the council. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. Crompton, since I have you at the mic, and this may be off the wall, but in our ordinances dealing with SPUD, PUDs, TNDs, is there some type of I want to say mechanism or something, wording we can put that would be lawful for when we approve a PUD, SPUD, that it stays that way, even though another entity would annex that situation?
That's a question that we need to ask a land use attorney.
Because I think somebody needs to, not that it's going to happen again, but, you know, council before painstakingly went through this process, did this to upgrade our community and keep people honest when they come in, developers come in from outside the parish and say, we're going to do this and we're going to bring this to you. And then the situation that took place in Sorrento really irks me. The fact that now they're asking for more leniency and to get essentially out of commitments that was made to the parish just because Sorrento now has annexed them. And so it's really, I think, unlawful for them to do it. So I would like to see if we can't find some verbiage or something to place an amendment on one of our ordinance in the future to deal with that, if that is all possible.
I understand, and it's something that we're going to work on together. And I think that, once again, just speaking, because it's sort of a subject that we just talked about today for the first time, if we're a parish and don't have control over what happens in a city, that's where the struggle is going to be, is creating the language that gives us the power even when we don't have the control.
Right.
And so that's why we're going to need some help, I think, from a legal side. And what Brian and I were talking about is when out of state, where we've practiced before, there's a developer's agreement that comes with a PUD approval, and that developer, when he signs the agreement, is saying, everything that's approved in this PUD is what I'm going to build.
Right.
Regardless of whether or not you're under the jurisdiction of a parish or a city or the state or whatever. And so we're thinking that that's probably going to be the direction we go. And yeah, we're probably going to be revising the PUD, SPUD, T&D ordinances. But that's where we're going to, I think, head, is in that direction.
And it is frustrating to see a developer come in, purchase a valuable piece of property, say, I'm going to do this, and then get annexed, and then essentially use time and negotiations to get a better deal. And essentially that's what they're doing. So we just needed some safeguards for our public, because essentially that's what it boils down to. Thank you.
And Mr. Valentine, I'm glad you brought that up first, because that's something I spoke with Mr. Compton right before the meeting and earlier today. Just to give you a little background about what happened is, again, the parish spent a couple of $100,000 investing in the procedures to establish a PUD, SPUD, and T&D ordinance in order to improve and force developers to make better developments and build infrastructure and make little communities that provided services for the residences, because, quite frankly, governments cannot build infrastructure. There's not enough money to do that. And we wanted to have the people that moved in pay for these extra infrastructure needs. And the first one that we established was Orange Grove, which is now part of Sorrento. It's in Burnside, by the way. And that land that was sold was only sold because they agreed to do a PUD and SPUD, a PUD on it, planned unit development. And at that time, that land was zoned to be 1 acre tracts. And in order to get a greater density, the developer agreed to do a PUD, and which they could get greater density than one, and they ended up get 3 per acre. They also agreed to provide land to the school board for a school. They also agreed to put a fire station in, to provide land for a fire station, and to put up $180,000 in construction of a fire station. And that agreement was made with the First District Fire Company. Also, it was supposed to be curb and gutter and sidewalks, and they had a commercial center in it. And so you would, by building that, we would build a little community, and having a small commercial center in there would reduce the amount of cars on the road, and as a way to reduce traffic. Since being annexed into Sorrento, all of that has changed. They've actually given Sorrento some money to be allowed to sell the lots that were supposed to be for a fire station for the people around there. The promises that were made to bring water to the area were not kept, And now they've also watered it down where there's no commercial center in it, and there's no sidewalks in the first phase, which I don't foresee as being sidewalks in the rest of it if you don't do it in the first phase. And so now what they've got is more of a cheaper subdivision, which we've been trying to avoid, with no sidewalks. And I don't think that's a very positive thing. This is what we've been trying to get away from, without the amenities that we're looking for. And so whatever we need to do to make it contractual or whatever, if someone wants to develop and increase their density, we need to protect the people of Ascension Parish, that if we're going to allow somebody to do that, that it's going to be contractual, and we're going to be assured that they're going to build it, and not find this loophole that inadvertently was done. So, yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Clark.
Ricky, thank you. And I agree with what Kent was saying. Basically, a lot of the things that we're seeing now, not to harp on the developers, but the fact is some of the things that we're seeing in the subdivisions that are not getting cleaned up, things like that, is that the developers are pretty much building and moving on along and just trying to abort whatever laws they can sometimes. Some are less desirable folks in development. And like I said, Orange Grove is a perfect example of what they tried, and they worked real hard to move out into a good thing, and it's basically being bought out, you know. We have, even though Orange Grove has went into Sorrento, we still have responsibilities for it, major drainage. We still have responsibilities for that, depending on how they build their infrastructure, you know, and stuff like that. So if they don't follow the rules, we're still going to be responsible for them in a way. It's not like that they belong to a municipality. All the municipalities, we still have a responsibility for them in drainage and stuff like that. So I don't see how they can just sit down and get all this. You talked about an agreement, a contractual agreement. I believe the vote of the Planning Commission and the vote of the council is pretty much a contractual agreement that what's presented was approved, not what's presented and approved and then changed later at the will of whomever, you know. So I appreciate your efforts in the zoning and the efforts in trying to clear this up.
Yeah, and we have no problem with the entities being annexed. That's not the problem. But
No.
we would like to see them built as promised, as agreed upon. So whatever we need to do, we're willing to.
And it's similar, and why I brought it up is similar to the sales tax agreements. We have sales tax agreements with entities dealing with annexed property. So there should be some type of agreement with these entities when something of a PUD, SPUD, or T&D nature comes into play. And that's why I said, I mean, I feel cheated as a councilman to go through all this, and I'm sure if you'd have been here, you would feel cheated too, to go through the situation thinking you got a contract. Here we finally got something positive where they have to do it because it's a contract. And it gets annexed, and now it gets all changed. So that's a little irritating to a councilman. It also bodes that future situations close to municipalities may get really hard, you know, a look the next time a developer comes before the planning and zoning and or this council.
And not to sling too many stones, because we do all live in glass houses here, but I think part of the problem lies in the fact that none of our cities have planning departments that can advise those cities on what the good decisions are, and they may be led by different factors.
Yep.
You know, where you know, I think that we've built a team that we're going to be able to come to you guys with good planning and smart growth and all those, you know, those good buzzwords, but those things that we think are going to make Ascension Parish a better community tomorrow. And when I read in the paper what was going on in the city of Sorrento, I said, boy, if they had a planner there, you could string him up in a tree and say, how could you let this happen?
Right.
And they just don't have that. They don't have the resources. You could say the same thing with the city of Gonzales and the city of Donaldsonville. They just don't have that person there that can give them the good, positive way that the parish and the city should grow. And I think that's part of the problem. It's a big part of the problem.
And that's why we made sure we went out and found somebody, one like you. The parish had that problem a number of years ago, and is something we were able to rectify, and we appreciate it.
And also that we have a joint venture with all the municipalities as they are part of Ascension Parish, and we're trying to grow as one. Is that any good advice if someone calls you from one of those municipalities that you could give them, we'd appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Okay,
Question.
yes. Okay.
Question's over. Question on the motion.
All right. We have a motion?
In a second.
Okay. Any objection? No objection. Number 7 is hereby sent to the council. Number 8, PUD SPUD Regulation Modification Ordinance, number PD 10-01.
What this item is we saw this recently with a SPUD that came before us, and through no fault of our own and through no fault of the developer had one idea in his head from what the language meant, and we as staff had another idea, but we didn't think that our idea would be backed up with legal counsel. And so we allowed the developer to do what he wanted to do. It was a very minor change, but what this language does is it says if you're coming to this parish and you're going to develop a PUD or a SPUD and you want to do something that is not according to our current code, you need to tell us before we approve your project. Don't expect that because you're a PUD or a SPUD, you're going to get variances after the fact. And so this language basically says, as a PUD or a SPUD, when you're approved, tell us anywhere you need a waiver or a variance from our code so that when it's approved, those waivers or variances are approved at the time of initial approval. There's nothing saying you can't come after the fact to get waivers or variances, but this language specifically says you've got to ask for them. You don't just get them because it says creative planning or creative ideas in the PUD SPUD.
Ricky, real quick. I agree with you 100%, and is that I think it's the burden, and I'm sure you guys will help educate anybody that's coming into the parish with some proposed building. But I think it's the burden of the guy that's coming in to do the work to actually look at our codes and know that if he's planning on making a change to it, he needs to propose that.
It is, and just for an example, this is not the example that came to us, but if I'm doing a commercial SPUD and I have 100,000 square feet of commercial, then I need to provide 500 parking spaces, whatever the number is, 5,000 parking spaces. Well, because the language in the ordinance today says you can use creative planning because you're a PUD, he may not have asked for that variance when he did it. He draws his buildings in, he gets 4,500 spaces, and you go, okay, well, whatever. We just want him to say at the very beginning, he wants 4.8 parking spaces per 1,000 instead of 5, so that we know that's what we're going to get. We don't get it in a year when he's coming to build it, and he goes, well, yeah, I've only got 4.8, it doesn't meet code, but I use creative planning. I mean, it's like you said, they need to know what the code is so that when they make the proposal, they know where they're
Doesn't
different.
he have an initial plan review?
He does, but
And we know that there's changes in everything.
there
in
are, but
construction.
generally you're not going to be that specific that early. But they've got the plan on their desk, but that may not be what you see when you approve it. You know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes you ask for a little bit more than you think you can get and more bubbles, and the PUD SPUD concept to me, and that's something that we're going to be working on here in the near future, is something that we try to nail down too specific too early. The developer, when he comes to the parish, needs to say, I want to do these uses in these locations. Here's going to be my traffic impact. Here's going to be my school impact. Here's where we're going to have access points which impact roads. Here's where the students are going to be coming and where they're going to be going to school. At the end of the day, I don't think that we care if this house is located here or here. I think we care if there's a density change on the boundaries. I think we care if there's access point changes. But more or less, we don't care if their traffic goes down. We don't care if their their school counts go down. We care if they go up. And so I think that today, the way our PUD SPUD is worded, we ask for too much too early. So some of the developers are hesitant to come to us with those ideas. And that's what we've been working. We've got a couple engineers right now that we're talking to about, okay, here's where we're going to be flexible. Here's where I would ask for a parking variance. Here's where, if you want to change your height or your setbacks or whatever they are, ask for them up front so you're not coming to us after you're approved and saying, oh, and by the way, I need a variance.
Yeah, but basically, we want to see the engineering side, not the architectural side. Like you said, You know, they look at the home placement and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think that, you know, you said we might be putting them kind of in a bind up front and, you know, ask too much detail, and then they got some changes sometimes. But I believe they can work with us on that.
And it really isn't a bind, because when we used to do PUDs in Florida, we would do almost an entire sheet of the variances and waivers, because we wanted to know that we have flexibility. We may not be intending on using an 18-foot front setback, but by approving the variance in the beginning, it's available to us. We would approve, 50 different lot types within one PUD, knowing we probably only going to use 3 or 4 of them. But you do it at the beginning so that you don't have to come back and ask.
Okay. Any other question, discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Cluott, refer this to the council. Any objections? None being, Ms. Suzanne put this on the agenda of the next council meeting. I want to apologize. I had a zoning issue that we were supposed to add at the beginning of the meeting, and to the agenda that has come up, and it's a good zoning change. And so I'd ask that if there may be a motion to put this on the agenda.
I'll put that in the form of a motion that we have a zoning change that Mr. Compton wants to bring in front of us.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to add zoning request change by Mr. Compton. Any objections? There being none, it is now on the agenda as number 8A. It's a zoning request change. Mr. Rickey, can you explain that?
Yes, sir. According to our code, in order to make a zoning map change, it can come one of 3 ways. The applicant or the landowner can come to us and ask. The zoning commission can make a recommendation like we did with the zoning map, or the council coming through a committee can make that request. And so what we're asking is for the strategic planning to make a request to rezone a particular piece of property located near the intersection of John Broussard Road and Highway 42. And Councilman Chris Lohr came to us and asked if we could look at this, because he had a neighborhood meeting where the property owner did not realize that his property was zoned commercial, and he does not want it zoned commercial. And I believe that it was a problem when we were doing our zoning map changes, that the lines just weren't turned on, and we missed it. And if we can get it on the little overhead, I can point out exactly which lot we're talking about. Essentially, the Crossroads Commercial used to run from the center line of 42 out, I believe 660 feet, and there's a piece of property, and it's not going to show it very good, but it's right here, a piece of property that was clipped by that 660, but it's actually a residential house. And so what we want to do is we want to rezone this piece of property right here from mixed use 2, which is what we changed it to, back to residential medium. So it's comparable to the houses that are across the street. And the applicant is asking us to do that, and we just feel this is the best way to get it.
So you see this as a housekeeping item, basically?
Yes,
on
sir,
your
just a map
original
cleanup.
overlay? I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Cluott,
Second.
second by Mr. Valentine, to make this into a residential thing. And this is a zoning change down, which is not usually asked for. So this is a good thing generally for the residences. Any discussion? Any objections? So moved. Ms. Suzanne, please send that to the next council meeting.
That's actually going to go to the zoning commission.
I'm
We're going to bring
sorry.
it back
You
through.
are absolutely right. It goes through our process, it goes to the zoning commission.
So we'll take care.
And then for their approval, comes back to the council.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Final approval.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricky. With that, we come to number 9.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
This meeting is now adjourned.